Welcome to the Suffren-class subbrief. Most people call this the Barracuda class because that's what it was originally known as, but officially today's subbrief of the French nuclear submarine is Suffren-class. That's the first thing we're going to take away from this lecture is that this submarine literally has two names. It started out as the Barracuda and was that for decades, but when they built the first one and commissioned it after French Admiral Suffren, it officially became the Suffren-class. So you will hear this submarine referred to as either one of those two names. And that's just the beginning of the interesting things we're going to talk about with this new nuclear attack submarine the French have built. So this submarine's built by the military industrial complex in France called Naval Group. It is a multinational corporation, but it's owned and run by France. It's literally the government's military industry. All right, and they're called Naval Group. So this submarine comes in at just under 100 meters in length, which means for a nuclear submarine, pretty short. So that's the first rounding down that we're going to do here. And she's just above 5,000 tons on the surface, or just below 4,700 tons whenever she's dived with a full complement of special forces, a very small crew for a nuclear submarine, about 65 people, and of course a full complement of weapons. This submarine is very small for a nuclear submarine. It's essentially a large, conventionally powered submarine, but with a nuclear reactor installed, adding that weight to it, bringing it up over 4,000 tons. This thing is smaller than the Chinese Shang submarine, which is the type 093. It's very small. This one's even smaller than that. This is the Le Car of nuclear submarines coming out of France. But there are a lot of advantages to being small when you're a submarine, and she takes full advantage of these. This is a nuclear-powered submarine with four 53-centimeter torpedoes. She has a torpedo room with 20 stows for full-size weapons. That's important is sea mines are often intentionally designed to take up only half a stow. So for every torpedo stow, you could also put two sea mines there if they were the short variety, which most of them are by nowadays. She does shoot the French 21 heavyweight torpedo, which is an outstanding weapon. We'll get into that. She shoots the French Scalp missile, specifically the naval Scalp, because there's multiple versions of the Scalp. Scalp's seen successful action in the Ukraine-Russia war recently at time of this recording. So we know that weapon is battle-tested. It does work. She shoots the ever-venerable and never-going-away Exocet missile. It's been upgraded to Block 2. That's a subsonic anti-ship missile. She can launch the FG-29 sea mines, which you can put 2 to 1 on those stows. And this is the first boat commissioned in 2022. They're going to build 6 of these things of the Suffren-class. All right, let's go over the sensors and countermeasures here. If we start all the way up forward, we have the Sea Clear mine obstacle and avoidance sonar system. Very advanced high-frequency sonar system. Basically maps the bottom and the area in the immediate vicinity out in front of the submarine and a little left, little right, And then anything that's metallic or a different density, essentially, will just light up the sonar screen like, hey, there's an object here, be careful. Could be a mine. That's what that's for. She has the Safran Series 10 CSR radar and the Safran Series 30 optronics mast with Aurora ESM. The UMS 3000 sonar suite is a very secretive sonar suite. There's not a lot of documents on it, but just know that she does have the latest, essentially, sonar suite installed on this submarine. Now, I hesitate there a little bit because this submarine has been in development for ages, and it's finally being built after, I believe, the first hull was laid down some 15 years ago, and they finally got her commissioned in 2022. So the Canto S torpedo countermeasure is also used on board this ship. It's a very effective evasion device. There's always this race, this balance between people that build and design submarine torpedoes and the people who build and design submarine torpedo countermeasures. And the pendulum swings back and forth between who has the advantage. And right now, the countermeasure teams are really figuring out clever ways to not just decoy and distract torpedoes as they've done for decades. The new capability is they can actually hit them with a small charge and destroy the sensitive electronics that drive the torpedo, causing it to spin out of control and destroy itself or just sink out. And that's part of what CantoS does. How it does all that is not public. Just know that the latest sonar system, torpedo countermeasures, and obstacle avoidance sonars are on board this newest nuclear French submarine. Let's talk about weapons. So she shoots the Scalp cruise missile, which is the naval version. She can shoot this from a submerged position, which is critical for self-preservation. For naval warfare, she can shoot the F-21 heavyweight torpedo, which is the mainstay torpedo of the French Navy. It's the one to use. She can also, of course, lay the FG-21 Syndrilic mine and shoots the SM-39 Exocet Block 2, which is much less expensive than a Scalp missile is, but also is an anti-ship missile, whereas Scalp is a land attack missile. I would not be surprised if Scalp has a naval variant, but for today's lecture, we're going to go with the Scalp land attack missile cruise missile. Here is the 6 ships of the Barracuda class / Suffren-class that are going to be eventually commissioned. We have FS Suffren was commissioned in 2022. I want you to note the keel laying years. She was laid in 2007. So some 15 years between the time they had laid her keel and had the ceremony with the politicians and the bands and the banners, and then actually getting to work on it and finishing it. Some people have had their entire careers start and end in the time it took to build the first submarine. It is a very long development cycle. This development cycle, in my opinion, was troubled, but because it is a state-run company, none of that's public. So we don't know. We don't have any evidence. But we do know that Australia, who was buying the conventionally powered short-fin Barracuda based on this design, canceled their contract essentially with Naval Group a few years ago and went with the United States and the United Kingdom to build a nuclear-powered Virginia style of submarine. It's a different class entirely, but it's based loosely on the Virginia class. Going to be built in the UK, by the way. Anyway, so back to the Suffren-class here. They're building 6 of these. They have 2 of these commissioned right now at the time of this recording. The next commissioning is scheduled to be 2025. The goal is to have all 6 up and running by 2030. And the primary mission of this submarine is to relieve the Rubis-class, which is the previous class of fast attack submarine that they had, and protect their ballistic missile fleets, which is the mission of the Rubis-class right now. So essentially, whenever their ballistic missile submarines go to sea, the Suffren-class will escort it, keep an eye on it, but stay far enough away from it to not give its location away should the escort be detected. It's kind of a fine balance that I would love to make a video about. I should go into how this works if I'm allowed to. Because obviously it's not an escort like you see in the movies or on the surface where you have a fleet. When you're a fast attack submarine and you're escorting a ballistic missile submarine, you don't want to give any indication that you're escorting a ballistic missile submarine. So there's certain things you have to do to avoid that. That's what this submarine is going to be doing. That is the mission that is already happening with the Rubis-class. This is the relief. All right, made in France, right up there at Cherbourg Naval Base. I'm told I say that wrong, but there's going to be a lot of French words I say wrong today, so please forgive me. That's the naval base that builds it, though. Okay, so Barracuda class, by the numbers again. I'm going to be going back and forth between Barracuda class and Suffren class. It's the same submarine. It's just this thing has been Barracuda for 15 years, and out of nowhere they changed it to Suffren class. So the Tech Atomic pressurized water reactor is a derivative of the K-15 reactor that pushed the nuclear-powered Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier around the Mediterranean for decades. So this nuclear reactor is even smaller than that one. And that one for an aircraft carrier was already really small. My point is it creates about half the power that it did before. But it is much smaller to fit inside this tiny little submarine that's only 100 meters in length, with a crew of 65 people, and then 15 additional, or basically a platoon of Marines, can come on board for shore activities. The max speed is 25 knots publicly. Because of its size, it's probably not much faster than that, because this pressurized water reactor only produces like 150 megawatts. It's not anything like the Americans or the British make. This is a tiny, Nautilus style trash can size. I'm talking about the kitchen bin in your kitchen over there, size reactor. It is very small, very small. But because it's nuclear, it does have unlimited range. It pushes around 4 torpedo tubes, and those torpedo tubes can shoot the heavyweight torpedo or the scalp cruise missile. It is protected by a complex suite of sonar systems, the UMS sonar system, and that is all combined via the combat system with the Suffren Series 10 I-band navigation radar, the mine avoidance sonar, and the Suffren Series 30 attack and search optronics mast, which means it's just a camera. It's not an actual periscope technically, even though it would look like a periscope to anyone that just looked at it. Essentially, it's a TV camera on a mast that goes up and down out of the submarine. The Cantos torpedo countermeasure system, I've already talked too much about that. Just know that it's a very advanced anti-torpedo system. It does have the capability, it's already got the space in place, let's put it that way, to deploy UUVs. They're probably already doing unmanned underwater vehicle operations. It's just not public yet. Just know that they've designed with UUV operations in mind whenever they built this thing years ago. It shoots the Exocet missile block 2, like we said, and of course the F-21 heavyweight torpedo. Here's that pressurized water reactor vessel outside the submarine before it was installed. So it's all very stainless steel and clean and shiny right here. And it will look this way too, even after it's operated. They're not going to let this thing corrode. It is a derivative of the K-15 reactor used on the Triumph-class SSBN. It is a smaller because they don't have as high power needs. Produces 150 megawatts of power, spins 2 turbines, and those turbines spin 2 alternators to generate electricity. It does have 2 diesel generators on board as well for backup, so you don't always have to have the nuclear reactor critical. You can operate the diesel generator to create electricity as well. And the shaft, single shaft, is connected to a pump jet. So very similar to the Virginia in terms of propulsion there. All right, here's the Barracuda sonar system manufactured by Talos. This is a modular sonar system, which means it's like Legos. You can buy the whole thing, get the whole kit, or you can buy, the bare bones, protect yourself from other submerged objects where you just have the cylindrical array, the flank array, and a combat system to communicate. But this one has the whole thing. It has the bow array, the flank array. It has intercept arrays, which means active intercept. If there's any operations of active sonar out there, it will not only just be intercepted, it will be analyzed. It will give it the pulse length, the power rating, the cyclic rating, how often it pings. It's very clever. It's very advanced. A lot of stuff we have to do manually in the past is done automatically by this system. I'm a little jealous of it. It has an underwater communication system integrated into the sonar system, so you can essentially pick up the bat phone and talk to someone outside the submarine if you wanted to, as long as they had a similar system to receive the communication. I want to be clear here. You cannot talk to a diver like they do in the movies. That's ridiculous. You have to have another sonar system on the other end to decode the signal. And it's not coded because of encryption reason. It's encoded so that it can transmit through seawater and actually travel a significant distance. And the way it does that is worthy of its own video. Just know that whenever you pick up the bat phone and you say, something to another submarine, that submarine has to be able to decode the underwater communication. You're not talking to divers outside the submarine. All right, I'll stop beating that drum. I see that in movies a lot. It bugs me. Okay, he has the Sea Clear mine obstacle avoidance array, which is really good. It's a I'm not going to say the range, but it goes out quite a ways and will show you the mines in front of you. And it may be friendly mines, right? You may be looking for your own minefield, verifying the mines are where they're supposed to be. This isn't always an infiltration thing. It's like, did the sea tides and time move our minefield so that it's no longer safe to pass through? You have to verify that stuff. And this is one of the tools to do that. There's much safer ways to do it, by the way, but this is a tool that would do that. And now they also have the DSUV towed sonar array, which is a kind of it is a thin line towed array, but it's not very long. So it's between the flank array and this towed array, they almost don't even need a towed array, to be honest with you. The flank array alone does a lot of the same job. But whenever it comes to having a submarine, it's great to have two of everything. So having a towed array and a flank array is even better. All right, I'll get off that because I don't overspeak. Let's talk about mast arrangement. This mast model that was at a trade show is close. It's not 100% accurate. The drawing on the right is much more accurate. This one's, I want to give credit to the artist here. His name's Richard W. Stern, and he does fantastic submarine sail drawings. That's his thing. He loves it, and he's very good at it. And he supplies those to us. It's very kind of him to do this. And here you can see the Series 10 LPI radar, low probability of intercept radar. That's navigation. That's just so they don't get detected as they're trying to transit in and out of port, or they're less likely to be detected. They have a DiveSat SATCOM antenna there at the back, Series 30 search mast, and the ARA 13 ESM, which is very clever. We'll talk about this in just a second. And the Series 30 attack mast, if I haven't already said that. Notice how the attack mast is very small and narrow and thin at the top. That's the part that's going to stick out of the water, versus the search mast, which is this big fat thing that has all sorts of sensors on it. There's a big reason for why those two are very different, and why you have an attack mast and a search mast, because they do two different missions. All right. So here's the CSR radar, low probability of intercept, operates in the X-band, high update rate, low range, 15 meter range accuracy. This has all the bells and whistles that will safely navigate you through buoys and in and out of port while you're on the surface. You can even operate this submerged. You could be at periscope depth, raise this thing above the water, rotate and radiate, and because it has a low probability of intercept, other ships in the area that aren't paying attention may not notice you. You can operate this thing and not be detected, possibly, if you wanted to take that risk. Just know that that is an option the captain has. But probably the biggest thing here is that this system can be operated at the same time as your RESM is operated. RESM is radar electronics surveillance measures or support measures, and you normally can't operate these two systems at the same time because they operate in the same bands, being 8 to 10 gigahertz in this case. But they have figured out a way to null out own ships' transmissions while simultaneously listening for the same transmissions in all bands, including the I band this radar operates in. That is a feat, ladies and gentlemen. That is amazing. I know how they did it, and it's very clever. Very clever. So hats off to everyone over there at Suffren Electronics for doing this. The same theory works in sonar, which is how we do similar things in sonar, and they applied it to radar. I'm not suggesting that it's new. I'm just glad that they're openly talking about it, and it is it's very, very clever what they've done here. That's the Series 10. Now we're going to Series 30 AOM. This is the Safran attack electronics mast. Very thin, like I said. This one does have an IR camera and an HD TV camera at the top with a 3 to 5 nanometer thermal imager, which means it's very sensitive. And the field of view is variable from 30 degrees all the way down to 3 degrees. So you could really narrow in on something. And your magnification goes all the way up to 12. If you know anything about thermal imagers or even infrared, you lose a lot of fidelity whenever you magnify, which is one reason why they reduce the field of view to help compensate for that. So you can zoom in on something far away, very specifically, and see it relatively clearly with this technology. The HD TV camera, in my opinion, is always going to be better, but there are times when you're going to have to use the IR sensor. All right, it does have the GPS antenna. Target recognition is already integrated into the system. So, for example, you could take a photo, hit the button of a ship broadside, and it would give you a likely classification, which is really nice. We used to have to do all that manually. All right, Series 30 SOM. This is the search optronics mast. This is the one that's a little bit fatter, but it's got a lot of stuff going on here. One, it's got a panoramic display. Now, a panoramic display means a lot of different things. The salesperson in this case would love to indicate that this is a 360-degree camera. It is not. A panoramic display on an American submarine optronics mast is. So they were very clever. This is clearly taken from a trade show, both the picture and the sales pitch. It is a wide field of view, but when you look at the sensor, it clearly cannot see 360. Just know that it's a very wide display. And it's got, infrared day cameras. Those are different things. Infrared cameras and day cameras. 5 to 3 nanometer thermal imager, same as the attack mast, including early warning, direction finding ESM, and a GPS antenna. And you can communicate with this. This is huge. You don't have to raise an additional mast for communications when you're at periscope depth. When you're at periscope depth, you're going to have this periscope or the attack periscope up all the time, unless you're dipping it for security reasons. So the idea that you can maintain communications with this mast raised and not have to raise a second one, so you're twice as likely to be detected by a periscope radar, is fantastic. So they've integrated the communications, GPS, everything the quartermaster needs, and American quartermasters do the navigation. That's different than the Royal Navy. All from one mast. The whole radio room is happy. They don't need you to bump antennas or anything to get their job done. They're doing it right as the officer of the deck is also doing his job on the periscope. All right, I beat that to death. So we'll move on. The R13 ESM, this is the very clever ESM that can operate at the same time as they operate their own radar, which I think is clever. I'm very impressed by that. It does have 6 antennas in that little masthead, covering everything from the C band to the J band and the X band, all the bands. This thing, I IOC'd all the way back in 1991. So, like I said, it's not new technology, but it's good technology. Something that is very interesting to me is that they have 68 decibels millimeter sensitivity. That's not as impressive on a radar system, in my opinion. It's still pretty impressive. What that means is, if I could boil this down, is as far as ESM goes, ESM is just receiving, right? It's just listening. Anytime you get near 70, that's nearly perfect. They're saying that they're 68 decibels. They're 2 decibels away from perfect ESM observation. In other words, if anything makes a sound, if a butterfly flaps its wings in anything between the J and C and X bands, then it's going to detect it, is what it's saying. And giving those high frequency rates, that's pretty impressive. But what's more impressive is they have the same capability for the sonar system, which is much lower frequency. It's much harder to achieve that near perfect 70 decibel sensitivity, which theoretically you could go beyond that. But 70 is the gold standard. And they're saying, and that is my Pikachu face in shock when I read this information the first time, that they have near perfect sensitivity for their sonar system, according to France. The UMS 3000 integrated sonar system, manufactured by Thales, this complete suite of hull-mounted bow, flank, and towed array sonars that can reach out and track contacts in excess of 130 kilometers, active and passive, has a sensitivity rating per beam of 68 decibels. That is almost impossible. I don't know how they did that. Let's put it that way. But if they've achieved the sensitivity, this might be the most sensitive sonar system ever created for anything. And keep in mind, a lot of this information is coming from a show expo about these sensors where the people are pitching them, because the French do sell this, a version of the submarine that's not nuclear, called the short fin Barracuda, with these systems on board to other countries. Brazil has one, a version of this. Yeah, so if they did the 68 decibel sensitivity on their sonar system, they might have the best sonar system in the world, hands down. Or it could be a sales pitch. There's probably a little bit of both in that. And I do want to mention, for those of you watching the video on this, the photo that I have up on the screen is not the same system. It is a generic sonar system photo. I had to put something on the slide because there are no photos that I know of the sonar system. If I had a real photo, I could probably make some estimates as to how good it is, but they won't show them. All right, so the Thales MOS, this is the mine avoidance obstacle and avoidance sonar that I've talked about. This thing, it's a 3-dimensional, high-resolution, forward-looking active sonar system. There's a passive mode, but you're not going to hear a mine that's sitting on the bottom in a passive mode, so you want to go active on it. The resolution's pretty good. It says the range is 1 kilometer. I'll go with that. And elevation is 6, 12, and 24 degree steerable beams. Number of channels is 60 and 32. That's transmit and receive. That's fine. So what's interesting here is the bandwidth is 36 to 72 kilohertz. That's not true. I don't know why they're putting that out there. That's pretty odd. So, source level 218 decibels, pretty loud. I was in 2004. I'll say this about the Talos MOS, the mine obstacle avoidance sonar, is it works. It's very good. It's longer than 1 kilometer, like it says here, and that frequency bandwidth is not true. All right, F-21 heavyweight torpedo, Naval Group, submarine launched heavyweight torpedo, is a 53 centimeter torpedo, so it fits in the torpedo room. It weighs just over 1,300 kilograms and goes up to 50 knots at a range of 50 kilometers. The way it does this is by using an aluminum silver oxide battery, which is a very high density, which means it can be small and still discharge an enormous amount of energy, getting very hot in the process, by the way. But it's on a torpedo, so it's not like you're going to get it back, right? Like, you're either going to hit your target or you're going to miss. Either way, the torpedo is hopefully not coming back at you. You wouldn't want that. And that's why an aluminum silver oxide battery or energy cell, it's a high density battery technically, not an energy cell. So I want to be careful with how I describe this. This high density battery pushes this torpedo to very high speeds, very fast, and it's kind of quiet. For doing 50 knots underwater, it's shockingly quiet torpedo. A lot of that has to do with it being electric. The electric motors don't make a lot of noise, and the impellers on the back that do make the noise, when this torpedo is coming at you, it's really hard to hear the engine because it's on the other end of the weapon, you know. Anyway, very good torpedo. This is why this is the standard heavyweight torpedo for the French fleet. It's very good. All right, here's the Naval Scout missile. This is submarine launched. Here you can see a great photo from Jane's of the booster motor pushing the missile out of the water. There's a little submarine down there. And this thing is a subsonic 1,000 kilometer range, 300 kilogram high explosive warhead cruise missile that is both GPS, internally guided. It has TERCOM guidance like the Tomahawk does, but also has an IR seeker and all the other bells and whistles that helps a missile know where it is, where it's going, and explode or hit the target whenever you get there, right? And this is simply the submarine version of the Scout missile. Of course, there's an air launch version. I'm sure there's a land version. I just haven't seen it myself. If you have, put it in the comments. So Exocet is the old standby cruise missile. SM-39 Block 2 is the technical name for it. This thing is a subsonic, very low sea skimming, submarine launched anti-ship missile. There's also an air variant. There's a surface ship variant. They've made all the variants of this Exocet. It's a very reliable, tested missile. Been tested in combat is what I mean. It does have a solid fuel rocket propulsion system. Gets it up in the air and going. It uses internal navigation and active radar for guidance. For example, the reason why it can stay very close to the water is that it has a little altimeter on the bottom, little radar altimeter, that's constantly measuring wave height and how safely it can get low and not get slapped by a wave. It wants to be right over the wave tops. So if you're in a calm sea and there's like very little wave activity, this thing will be feet off the ground. Like, it's very low. It's very good at that. Anyway, it's an anti-ship missile. It'll blow you up. All right, final thoughts on the Suffren-class/Barracuda class. Yeah, like I said, it's going to escort the SSBNs out during their SSBN mission. The way it does that is very cool, and maybe one day I can tell the world about it. Probably not. The new reactor, smaller than the one that's used on the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, and also on the ballistic missile submarine that it's going to be protecting. It's even smaller than that one. This is a tiny, tiny submarine. It's the Le Car of submarines. It does have high speed thanks to its pump jet propulsion, and the fact that it only displaces less than 5,000 tons submerged is It's insane. A nuclear-powered submarine weighing in at 4,700 tons is a rocket ship, especially in acceleration. It's going to get to its max speed quick, unlike the Lakar. So this is one of the few submarines that's capable of deploying air defense. We saved this for the end because we don't have any documentation on this. This is simply a claim by Naval Group that they have designed a surface-to-air missile, or in this case, a subsurface-to-air missile, that can destroy maritime patrol aircraft, which are usually big, slow, lumbering, often propeller-driven, low-flying aircraft, or it can destroy helicopters nearby. There are no specifics on performance parameters in terms of range, capability, speed. Is it smokeless so it's not visually detected by the low-flying aircraft? Because obviously if they see it coming, they're just going to get out of the way. We don't know any of that. All we know is that Naval Group claims to have put a surface-to-air missile that can be fired from periscope depth and shoot down any nearby aircraft. That's what we know. That's what they claim. So if that's true, well, good on them. It is likely to be true because Germany made similar claims years ago, again, without any documentation, because it's so secret they don't want to give any hints to anything, at least not publicly, obviously. Okay, the submarine is often is offered as a non-nuclear export called the short-fin Barracuda. This is the one that was turned down by Australia. Right. I'm not aware of any sales right now. I know, like I said, Brazil was interested in one. I'm not sure if that sale ever went through. We'll have to keep an eye on that because Brazil has high hopes and big dreams with no money. And Naval Group's all about paying the bills. You got to pay the money to get the submarines. They've scheduled 6 of these to be built. They've already commissioned 2. They have multiple on the blocks right now being constructed. And by 2030, they're all going to be finished. All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has been the French Navy Suffren-class nuclear submarine. Thanks for listening.